All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. The Steelers are now back in first place in the AFC North, 6-2. We got some help from our great friend Jameis Winston this week. The Ravens lost, and the Steelers are now in sole first place. I mean, did you think that was coming, David? I don't know if I was thinking that was coming maybe a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, no, absolutely not. We did predict the win, or I know I predicted a win.
I did too.
So we were expecting that, but I was like, the only way we're going to get back at top in the AFC North is by us beating the Ravens. But the fact that, they let us get back up top without them, very shocked, very happy about that. And, I was not expecting it at all.
I kind of saw it coming because AFC North football is always close. So no matter how bad a team is, it's always going to be a close game. And famous Jameis, he gives them a better shot to win than Deshaun Watson, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with both of those, and I think that the Browns are a different team now. Just like last year, once they got a different quarterback in there, they were a playoff team. So I think that they're that same team. Obviously, there was a lot of moments where it was like, all right, that should have been a turnover. But I was just expecting the Ravens to stay on this roll that they've been on of just taking people out and doing exactly what they want. So I was a little shocked that the Browns defense was able to, kind of suppress them. And to be blunt, the Ravens probably should have won that game. There was the easiest interception of Kyle Hamilton's life that fell right out of his chest. Then the next play they lose. So I still think, though, that the Browns are obviously better now, but I was definitely shocked that they came away with the win.
Well, I think that also is very telling of the Jameis Winston experience because, he had several balls that were thrown that are probably picked off by literally anybody else. For whatever reason, the Baltimore secondary just cannot catch easy interceptions, Kyle Hamilton's being the most notable of those. But I think that also it means that, yes, Jameis Winston might beat you one week, and he might hand you a win the next week. So that's kind of the nice thing that we get to see. We get to see the Ravens be the guinea pig for that, and they were on the short end of the stick, which I think is, obviously it's great. So at this point, I think we can kind of hope that the Browns are this scrappy little team that can beat some people. Because, what are they now? They're 2-6, right? So, they're not making the playoffs, right? There's no way they can come back and, be 10-7. That's just not going to happen. So have them play spoilers for a good bit, and I actually have a little bit of information regarding the Browns that I'm not gonna say anything yet. It's definitely way down the road, but it is an interesting nugget regarding me and the Browns. So that'll come down the road. I'll reveal that later. But that's kind of my hope right now, is that the Browns can kind of just beat up on the division opponents, and hey, who knows what happens, how we benefit from that. If we can actually find a way to beat them, then if they can find a way to beat those other teams, then that helps us out a lot.
Absolutely, and I think that, if they can beat the Bengals twice, have they already played? I can't even remember. I don't think the Browns...
No, I don't think they've played yet.
But if they can beat the Bengals twice, that would basically knock the Bengals out of definitely division competition, but playoff competition. And because... the Bengals, I don't want to doubt them because you never know with these guys, but this is a bad start, and 5 losses, hard to come back from after 8 weeks, but it could be done. So if the Browns could get 2 more losses onto those 5, that would be awesome. And if they could spoil the Ravens again, that'd be super beneficial for us going into the future.
All right, so we've talked plenty about the Ravens and the Browns. How about we talk about our good old Pittsburgh Steelers, who managed a one-score win on Monday Night Football. What did you think? We talked very briefly before we started this, And you said you were fairly satisfied with the outcome. What makes you satisfied with this win?
I'd say I was satisfied because now, I will say, there's obviously some negatives. Our defense was a little spotty, very bad in the run game, but very pleased that T.J. Watt showed up and Highsmith showed up. I think the defense, still as a whole, played fairly decent, even though we couldn't really control the run game. I was just super impressed offensively. I think that besides that turnover, I don't really remember punting much, but besides that one turnover, I tell you, we got inside the 30 easily. It was with ease that we were getting into the red zone. And yeah, this week was a little rough. We started off with 3 field goals, which we should have had 2 touchdowns. If George Pickens gets his feet down on one and then just, the penalty. So I think that kind of taking that into account where it's all right, we really did score 17 points in that opening game, in the beginning of the game. And so I was just very pleased to see our offense, it was the first time that I watched it, honestly, since our winning stretch in 2020, where I'm this is not paint drying. This is enjoyable. And I do have a definition for the Steelers this year. I think that the way to describe this team is that, and this is what gave me satisfaction after this game, was that I think that this team can beat anybody in the NFL. However, it is not one of the teams to beat. There are the Ravens, I would say, is a team to beat. The Chiefs, yes. I'm trying to think in the NFC. There's the Commanders, honestly,
The Lions.
Yes. The Lions. There are teams to beat where people put them at the top. We're not one of those, but we can beat any team, and I feel like we haven't had that. Honestly, I feel like we haven't had that energy since 2018. In 2020, obviously, we collapsed, so it's a little different. But I feel like this is the best cumulative team we've had since 2018.
That's a great breakdown, and you specifically have talked about that a lot. If you can't beat anybody, then it just doesn't matter. If you can't beat everybody, then you can beat nobody, essentially.
Right.
And that's kind of what you've been drilling that into me a whole lot over the last 2 years or so. And I've started to kind of agree with that because there are teams that you see, they sneak into the playoffs and they can't do anything, us being a prime example of that. And if you are going to have to settle for a wild card, then if you can't beat everybody, then your playoff berth is essentially worthless. There's teams that sneak into the playoffs. Let's take the let's take an MLB example with the World Series ending up last night. The Detroit Tigers this year. I mean, they came in and people were wondering, okay, are they even? Is it even worth it for them to be here? And then they beat the Astros in 2 games in the wild card series, and they took Cleveland, who was a top 2 team in the American League, to 5 games, and they just about had them beat as well. So those two comparisons, it's you can have a team that is one of those to beat, like you said, your top dogs, like the Lions, the Ravens, the Chiefs. Those are my 3. Maybe throw the Texans in there as well. But the interesting thing about being a team that isn't one of those teams to beat, but that can beat any other team, is that sometimes you don't get the respect that those other, the Lions, the Chiefs, the Texans and such, you don't get the same respect that they do from these other teams that are coming in to play you. And it's okay, there's you talk about preparation a lot. There's a difference between preparing for let's say the Titans and preparing for the Bengals, however good the Bengals are actually. And the whole deal of it is the Steelers might get underrated in the opposing team's preparation, if that makes sense. And I think that helps us a lot too. Even look back this week. This week was such an interesting week in the NFL because the Raiders had the Chiefs pretty much pinned down for a good bit of that game. And I came into that game thinking, okay, yes, the Raiders are awful and the Chiefs are still undefeated, but I thought that the Raiders had a chance to win that game coming into the game, not even seeing any part of what that game was. like I think it was, I forget, it was like 17-14 at one point, and the Raiders had a shot, I think, to take the lead. And I think they went 0 for 4 in the, like, inside the 5 or something like that. They went for it and they didn't get it after a turnover from Mahomes or something like that. But it's like some of those, like, high octane teams that you have to prepare well for, like, those bottom feeder teams are going to go after that because they see that as a statement win. The Raiders beating the Chiefs would have been a big deal. The Raiders understand that it's a divisional matchup, and that's something I don't think the Steelers are quite at yet. They're not a team to beat. I think they're still a little bit underrated in terms of league-wide. I mean, would you agree with that too?
I completely agree with that because I do think that, like, to your point, like the Chiefs, the Ravens, teams to beat, maybe the Texans, maybe like the Packers or the Vikings, like definitely the Lions for sure. But like everybody besides the Lions looks very beatable at times, especially the Chiefs. Like, yes, okay, the Chiefs are 7-0, but they look like our 7-0 when we were the 2020 Steelers, where it's like, oh my gosh, last second we got out of there. All right, we won. Let's move on to next week. The Chiefs, I think, I've seen so much where it's like, can they go undefeated? This is insane. They're doing amazing. And it's like, yeah, they're winning and they're finding ways to win because they know how. But I tell you what, if this team has a little crack, they'll collapse. I feel like that's where they're at this year. And so I do think we are underrated. I think there's a decent amount of teams this year that are somewhat underrated because it's like, you know, there's like a decent amount of teams that are like 5-2 or 6-2, and you're like, oh, like they're 6-2? Like, interesting. I didn't think that they like were like that. And so I think that'll change as the year goes along. But I think that we're definitely, like, no one's talking about the Steelers being a powerhouse in the AFC.
Yeah, I would heartily agree with that. Now, I think that the Giants came very well prepared for this week. I think that their whole game plan was to have a shot at halftime. If they were in the game at halftime, then they had a shot to win. And I think that's exactly what happened. And I was talking in our Outside Perspective episode with JC. He didn't really hit on it too hard. It was just a very fleeting comment that he made. But he said that the Giants were one of the best teams in red zone defense. They don't give up a lot of touchdowns when their opponents get into the red zone. And that was very evident this week early on. Like you mentioned, the 3 field goals. Twice, I think we were inside the 10. And the other one, I think we settled for it like just outside of the 20 or something like that. So like you said, we were driving down the field with effectiveness, but not being able to punch it in. And maybe that is because of this type of defense. Some defenses, they play well when it comes to red zone defense. The Steelers are one of those teams. You know, we see that a lot. We have a lot of takeaways in the red zone this season. And, you know, the same thing kind of with the Giants. They have a good red zone defense. So I think you tip your cap, honestly, to the Giants this week for keeping it close. And you've mentioned it several times. Their running attack with Tyrone Tracy was just, it was excellent. And I really hope he's okay after that injury. I don't know if I have heard any updates on that. I think it was a head injury. I'm not sure if it was a concussion, but I really hope he's okay because he's electric, man. He's fun to watch.
Oh, he is. I mean, he just had, like, the burst. Like, there were, you know, it was 2 different types of runners that night where, you know, you got Najee who, like, gets 2 or 3 yards and then he's you know, burrowing his shoulder in somebody. And then you got Tracy where it's like, I'm just going to run right past you. And, like, he just was speedy, quick. You know, it was, as a Steelers fan, tough to watch, but like anybody else, I'm sure it was really, you know, fun to see. And I think that it's concerning going into the future for us. I think that's our biggest concern is that, and this is just the paradigm the Steelers tend to stay at with Mike Tomlin is that, oh, the offense is getting good? Hang on. Like, let's put on all the defensive handicaps and let's start giving up the run. Let's not be great in the pass again. So I think it's worrisome for sure. I think that, you know, I don't know where Patrick Queen is. I don't know where the middle of the defense is. So I don't know what your takes are on the defense. I'd love to hear them, but I would say that besides our edge rushers and besides our D line, I am mildly concerned for what the Giants were able to do.
Okay, so one of the biggest problems that I was seeing this week was on screenplays, honestly.
Yeah.
Again, going back to the preparation, I think the Giants were well prepared to capitalize on the aggressiveness of our defensive line and understanding the skill set of Daniel Jones. Obviously, Daniel Jones didn't run pretty much at all. And I think that's, again, because of the ACL tear that he suffered last year. But he was getting the ball out quick. And those quick slants, those quick screen plays, those were the ones that really hurt us this last week. And I don't know if it's just good game planning on the Giants' part or if it's poor execution on our part. That's kind of the line that I'm trying to toe when trying to evaluate this team, is because I truly believe, and based on the results of the game, based on how the game was going, I think the Giants had us right where they wanted them. Because, I mean, they were in the game at the very end. They had a chance with the ball in their hands to go down and score and tie the game, albeit they had a couple of really stupid plays in the game, being that 1 2-point conversion where they just chucked like 4 guys on the left side. They had like 2 offensive linemen, and then nobody moved, and Alex Highsmith just went through everything. Like, I think if that doesn't happen, if they just like kick the extra point, I think I'm a little bit more nervous on that very last drive because, you know, they were going to need a touchdown and they were going to need a 2-point conversion. But I think that they were executing their game plan fairly well this last week. And again, I don't know if it's me having to give the Giants credit or if it's something of concern for our defense.
I would say, and something you said actually reminded me of what I wanted to talk about. I would lean more towards concern, and I sent this to our group chat, and then I also sent it to my dad, like a direct quote, because I couldn't believe I heard it, and it was a little affirming because of what I had said last week about our defense, but Joe Buck, word for word, said about the Steelers, they are not a complicated defense. And that's what I said. That's what I was kind of getting to last week, was that we don't really run any switches or special things in the D-line. They just run straight. And then our defense, and Joe Buck was just alluding to that, also in the secondary. It's not complicated. It's a simple defense. And my biggest concern is that if Daniel Jones and the 2-win Giants can get past this not complicated defense, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and the Lions are going to get right past us. And that's my biggest concern with Tomlin is that, and we've seen, okay, not complicated when you have a lot of talented players, works against the below 500 teams. But a not complicated defense, even with Hall of Famers, does not work against the Super Bowl winning teams. So I think that Tomlin thinks that simplicity is better, including as a whole. But complicated works. In the NFL, complicated works. If you want simplicity, go to college. Complication works in the NFL. Look at how complicated and confusing the play designs are of the Chiefs and the Lions. And even their defenses. And so I think that that's my biggest concern, is hearing what I was saying was a hypothesis with the D-line. Joe Buck kind of affirmed it. And I'm all right, we got to get complicated. We have to become a complicated team or else we're not going to win in January.
Do you think that this simplistic type of defense, do you think it changes once the bye week happens and our competition ramps up? I asked you this several weeks ago, more in terms of the offense. The offense seems to be clicking now. I mean, they've scored 30 points, and then almost 30 points. Probably should have been over 30 points if they can convert one of those 3 in plus territory in the first quarter. Is this kind of a ploy on the part of the Steelers? They're not showing their hand quite yet because, I mean, you look at the teams like the Lions, they're going out every single week and they're emptying the playbook. They're doing these insane trick plays while they're up 50 points in the game. And it's maybe you should be saving those for, like, I don't know, maybe the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl or something like that. Like, is this strategically done to where we're doing stuff simply, or are we just embracing the fact that we are a simple defense?
I would hope that we're hiding things. However, based off the defense that we've seen the past 4 or 5 years and almost all of Tomlin's career there, I would say that we'll see the same no matter what. Like, honestly, in the past 4 years, I don't really know if I've seen the defense change at all. Like, if we've seen any difference in formations and, like, just trying to confuse an offense. I don't think that we do that. And it's unfortunate because I would love to see that. But I think that, Tomlin's a very stuck in his way kind of guy, and it worked for him when, they went to Super Bowls, but that was because you had, like, a Hall of Famer or all-pro player at, like, every position. And so, yeah, you can run a simple defense when every player on your defense is the best defensive player out there. And now, you've only got, like, Watt, Hayward, and Minka are the 3 guys you could really say are, like, the best at their position out there. And I think that you've got, again, like, the whole point, the whole point of a coach is that a coach is supposed to make life easier for a player. The coach is supposed to make the job for the player easier. And I feel like it's almost reversed for Tomlin, where Tomlin's like, I want this all-pro player to make my life easier and just go make a play. And it's like, that's not how, like, he's got the lineup wrong. It's no, the coach helps the player, not the player helps the coach.
I saw this stat. They actually flashed a graphic of it. We only blitz 17% of the time. And it's interesting because we were talking about how the line hasn't been getting home to the quarterback a whole lot recently. They did get home this week a couple of times. Obviously, Watts, Highsmith. Did they both have 2 sacks? I think they both had 2 sacks.
I think maybe. I know for sure where Highsmith had 1. Highsmith may have had a half of 1 with somebody else.
Okay. Well, so right before, I think it was right before halftime. Maybe it was after halftime. I can't remember exactly when it was. But Watt got a big sack, and then immediately they switched him on the line. They put Watt on the right side, and then, because they were trying to take advantage of their left guard he was signed off a practice squad. And so obviously Highsmith is on the right side most of the time. He gets a sack, and then you come in and you flip him, and then Watt's on that side. And then he comes in and gets another sack. And I like that look, and I think that might be the complexity. That's the word for it. The complexity of a very simple defense is doing something as simple as that. Because if you take a look at our team, our strength is our defensive line. You've talked about that a whole lot. Maybe the whole reason why we're playing a very simple defense. I mean, you think about, like, the Vikings. I mean, they blitz over 50% of the time. And that's a very different type of defense. It's an explosive defense, but it's a very different looking type of defense. The fact that we're only blitzing 17% of the time means that we're allowing our second and third levels to have help. And I think that maybe the success of our secondary specifically this season has come because we're giving them help. We're allowing Minka to stay stationary in his one spot to kind of be this one safety, and then everything from there, it's kind of helping. It's helping the second and third tiers because we know that our defensive line on that first line is going to be doing fine whether we're blitzing or not. And I think that maybe is the idea behind Joe Buck's his simple defense quote, if that makes sense. Because it's not a defense that blitzes a whole lot. I mean, we're like dead last in the league in blitz percentage. So maybe that's kind of what he's alluding to. And sure, we don't give a whole lot of different looks. There's a lot of other defenses that they disguise a lot of other things, but we don't really have to disguise anything because we play a lot of man-to-man. Our Our cornerbacks are matched up one-on-one most of the time. Again, we're not blitzing a whole lot, so we're not taking something away from the secondary. And Minka doesn't move around a whole lot. He's pretty much just in one spot, and he's been effective in that spot. Yes, he doesn't have the interceptions that maybe we're hoping for, but that's probably a product of just how they've been utilizing him. And, I mean, Beanie Bishop had another interception this week. He's had 3 in the last 2 weeks. He got named, what was it? The defensive rookie of the month, Beanie Bishop got. I saw that today. Chris Boswell got special teams player of the month, again, for the second straight month, which is awesome. But, like, thinking about guys like Beanie Bishop, Dante Jackson, Deshaun Elliott. Deshaun Elliott might very well be our best defensive player this year, just by the way that he's been playing. And Dante Jackson, like, he's been playing really well, too. And I think that's a product, again, of just maybe the simplicity of the defense. Again, we're not blitzing a lot, and we're giving help to our guys in the second and third tiers, which is allowing them to make those types of plays. And I think the biggest teller of when we're not making those plays is the communication. I think those couple of losses that we had, I think those were on Patrick Queen, because he even came out and admitted that his communication skills, being the guy with the green dot, were not very exceptional in those 2 losses. So if you think about the 2 weeks that our defense has truly struggled, I mean, again, the Giants only put up 16 points. So it wasn't a lot. Their only touchdown was a 45-yard run by Tyrone Tracy towards the end of the game. Like, I think that, I don't know if it's, I really do think that the defense's simplicity aids us. And I think, I mean, there's still a very, very good defense. And I'm kind of retrospectively looking back to those 2 weeks where Patrick Queen wasn't doing a good job communicating. And I think that's kind of the cause for why the defense struggled those 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, and I didn't know that we didn't blitz as much, but, thinking about it, it makes sense. And very well to your point, like, that could be true, is being able to get more help there in the secondary. And, the secondary obviously has improved a lot. And yeah, I did like the switch of Watt and Highsmith after the 1 sack. I'd love to see more of that, because that definitely throws people off more than what would be expected. And, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely more of a, like, blitz, go get the quarterback kind of guy. But I do like that we are able, I mean, we still can, that this week we were able to get decent amount of pressure, where in past weeks we were not really getting to the quarterback much. So I think that I think that a good balance should be had, because, like, you want to equally be able to get to the quarterback as much as holding up a strong secondary. And I do like, though, that people are able to be in their roles. Like, Minka had been the leading tackler the past couple of years, and it's like, you're a safety. That shouldn't be your job. And, like, on Monday, he had a great pass breakup.
Yeah, he did.
And was that on the last drive, or was it towards the very end of the game?
It was towards the end of the game. It was on a 3rd down play, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if the Tyrone Tracy touchdown had happened yet, but, I mean, it was a very significant play. And I think I even texted in our group chat. I said that was a big play.
Yeah, that was huge. It was so awesome to see him make a big play. And yeah, I definitely have more confidence in the secondary and, like, the defense as a whole. And, like, yeah, like, again, like, the comment about the not complicated defense and it being simple, like, obviously it works. And obviously we can do it, and we've got the guys that can do it. And so I'm obviously, I'm not, like, against the simple defense. I would love it if it was a little bit more complicated and some more wrinkles were added into it as the year went on. But as it is right now, I like the not blitzing much and stuff like that. As it is right now, I'm very happy with it. I think obviously it does need to get better in a few steps. But yeah, I'm happy with our team as a whole, and especially shout out to special teams coach Danny Smith, because he's had the best special teams over the past month. It's just been insane to see all of the things our special team has done. And Calvin Austin had a heck of a game, and I love Calvin Austin. So he won special teams player of the week, and Watt won defensive player of the week. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, Calvin Austin, a heck of a game. And Like that was the type of play that we've been looking for him for a long time. And I don't know if you had the same sentiment as me. I saw the flag on that play, and the entire time I'm just like, it's getting called back. This is all for naught. And then they called it on the Giants, and I was like, wait, no way! That's a touchdown! No way!
Oh, yeah. I was exactly... Right when I saw the flag, I was like, oh, okay, whatever. It's coming back. And then they pointed towards the Giants, and I was like, you've got to be kidding. Like, that just counted. So, that was so awesome. And, like, speaking about the wide receivers in the offense, and this is... I'm saying this in a lighthearted way, but George Pickens has got to be just the most unathletic moving person I think I've ever seen. Like, his 115-yard pickup, it was the weirdest 15-yard pickup I'd ever seen. He, like, backstepped, sidestepped, did a backspin, and somehow got 15 yards, and then went out of bounds. And I'm like, what did I just watch? Like, how did you, like, that was the weird, and then, like, when Russell Wilson fumbled, when he was going, I don't know if you saw this, it's the weirdest tackle attempt I've ever seen, but basically the guy is going down with one of our O-linemen when he has the ball, and George Pickens jumps like he's jumping over them, but instead of completely jumping over them, just back falls on top of both of them and just lands on both of them. And I'm like, what? And my dad was like, he's like a 5-year-old just playing around back there, like just all super loose, like, oh, happy-go-lucky. Like, I'm just like, he had another great game and has been playing well, and that wasn't anything against him. I'm just saying it's really interesting to watch because every play you're like, what is he going to do?
Well, he also is just continually the most unlucky wide receiver ever because he can never get a freaking touchdown to count. The first one should have been a touchdown, and Broderick Jones is just, again, what is he doing? It was a stupid face mask, and it didn't help anything. It literally didn't do anything to the play. Russ was completely gone out of the play, and then Broderick Jones decided to hold the face mask. So that was one touchdown taken away. And then his second one, honestly, it was just a great play by, I think his name's Deontay Banks or Dante Banks, who JC in our Outside Perspective episode said was a low-effort player. So very interesting thing that a low-effort player took away a touchdown from another allegedly low-effort player. And it was an excellent play, too. And the fact that his other foot never got down is just mind-boggling to me. But, I mean, I think it was the right call. There were some people that saying that, I guess, like, there's, like, if you get the same foot down twice, that it should count. Like, do you understand that? Or did you think it was the right call in the moment?
I did. I think you should have to get both feet down instead of just the same one twice. It's very confusing. Like, at first, when it happened, I was like, okay, but, like, does it still count? I'm like, I don't know. I don't really know. Didn't really know the rule, but now, obviously, we know. But, yeah, I think that it was the right call, and it was unfortunate. It was funny. Who was I? The halftime show, Jason Kelsey was like, he was like, I feel like, every year or so, every 2 or 3 years, there's like a catch that happens that makes everybody need to say, wait, what's a catch? And it's unfortunate that in recent memory, that one that he mentioned, and then obviously the Jesse James, it's happened.
He still caught
it. He did. It happened against our favor. And I really loved what our friend Joe said was that George Pickens is the greatest wide receiver at plays that don't count.
Right. It's so true. It's so true. Ugh. But, I mean, even just going outside of George Pickens, I mean, the deep ball to Calvin Austin, I mean, that was excellent.
That was awesome.
I mean, the deep ball has effectively been opened up. We are now seeing deep throws for the first time since Ben. Kenny Pickett never did this. The one time he threw a deep ball was to George Pickens one-on-one in that Ravens game last year. That's about the only time we've ever seen it. And it's like Russ is throwing a good ball. A couple of them were underthrown, but even guys like Van Jefferson coming back to the football and making some really nice catches. I think that, like, this kind of leads into my last question for this episode. Is it still worth it to go out and get a wide receiver with how many have already come off the board?
I think so. I think that I think let's go get one. Like I have the belief that this team could beat anybody. So it's like let's make a push for right now. Like we got Russ for a year. Like let's go for it, and let's get him like another serious weapon. And I know a lot of people have talked about Cooper Kupp, but I don't think that the Rams will give them up now. My dad actually threw out Darius Slayton. And he was saying like, for all intents and purposes, Slayton put up his audition against us on Monday. And obviously played well. And I'm like, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think that I don't know around the league who I would want as another guy who could be solid for a little, but I'm very open to it.
Cooper Kupp is not getting traded because I think the Rams have reason to think that they can make the playoffs again.
Yeah.
Darius Slayton kind of gives me George Pickens vibes. I think they kind of do the same thing. Maybe even kind of the same as Calvin Austin. Again, we need a guy that can separate. That's kind of our biggest deal right now. And again, I just don't know how many guys are like that in the league. Our good buddy, Deontay Johnson, is now a Raven.
I was just going to say, I hope he drops as many passes with them as he did with us.
Well, the whole thing with the Ravens wide receiver room is that Deontay Johnson is literally just a carbon copy of all of them. He'll make some really nice catches. He can run good routes. He'll get open, but he'll drop it when it matters the most. I mean, did you see the one Rashad Bateman dropped this last week? I mean, nobody within 10 yards of him. Like, 50-yard bomb from Lamar Jackson by himself, and Bateman, like, it hits him in the chest and it, like, falls uncaught. It was an egregious drop. It was awful. And I'm thinking to myself, Lamar's throwing a pretty ball this year. You can't deny that. He's putting it on him. And his receivers just can't catch. And I feel like, again, Deontay Johnson, he's a great wide receiver, but he has the same type of problems that the other Ravens wide receivers do.
Oh, without a doubt. And unfortunately, I have to admit, I know I don't say he throws a good ball, but this year he's been throwing some tight passes. But yeah, I mean, I hope that just continues. I hope that the defensive back drops, feeds into the wide receiver drops, and then Deontay brings his drops over, and they just drop everything. And I would love to see that. And I'm glad we didn't go get him back or something.
Well, it was actually impossible because there's a rule that we couldn't have traded for him even if we wanted to.
Really?
I don't know exactly how the rule actually works, but we could not have traded for Deontay Johnson whether we wanted to or not this year.
That's interesting. Well, I'm glad about that. But thinking just off the top of my head, like thinking about a guy who needs separation, who's a number 2 right now, and honestly is getting completely overshadowed, and I think could be really good with us. And because they lost this week, I think their playoff chances are next to gone. I wonder how cheap Jalen Waddle would be. Because, I think he's at his lowest value right now because he really hasn't done anything this year. And, as long as Tyreek's there, which he won't be there much longer, he's going to be overshadowed. And who knows with this whole Tua saga that's been happening. And I don't know if Mike McDaniels will be the coach at the end of this year. So I think that, could be reason to believe to investigate in that trade because if he can create separation with his speed.
That is very true. That's a really good prospect. I like that a lot. We'll throw up a little poll on our Instagram page. Who do you want to see the Steelers go after in a trade? Because I think the trade deadline is next week, right?
I think, either next week or the end of, I don't know, because I know it's next week because we have a bye week 8. So
yeah,
or no, was this week 8?
This is week 9 coming up.
Okay, so I guess it ends at the end of week 9, maybe because I know it ends right. Well, it may have changed after the addition of the 17th game because I knew it used to be week 8, but now maybe it's a little longer. So
maybe it's it might be like Tuesday of next week. We're doing this on what's today, Thursday. It might be like this coming Tuesday. I think it is.
That sounds right. Normally it's like a weekday like that.
Okay. Well, again, we'll throw it up on the Instagram. Go follow at Boardman and Gold on Instagram. Who do you want to see the Steelers go out and get as far as wide receiver? Or maybe there's another guy at a different position you want the Steelers to go get, because we've got a week to kind of think about it. We have the bye week this week. We will have a bye week episode. We'll kind of do a little report card deal, and then we will have another outside perspective episode with a Commanders fan. That'll be coming up next week, so stay tuned for that. One more thing I do want to talk about this week. Najee Harris, man. Najee Harris has been incredible. I think you mentioned his name once, but I think it's very pertinent that we talk about him, maybe even just a little bit.
Absolutely. I love him. You know, it's a contract year, so of course he's going to be putting in the best. And, like, honestly, whether he stays or whether he goes after this year, like, I love Najee, and I think that he's gotten too much hate, I think, over his 4 years. I mean, 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. He's Lord willing, heading straight towards another one. And I think that I've loved him, and he's been, the past 3 games, he's been on fire, and I'm loving it. I hope he keeps it going.
And I said it last week. It is so important that Najee is playing well, because it opens up the play action pass. And where did we do our most damage this last week against the Giants? Play action. That was how we succeeded on offense this week. And again, almost another 30-point game. Again, with a couple of touchdowns in that first quarter, we were looking at close to 40. So this offense is really, really working well right now. And we'll kind of talk about the state of the Steelers in our bye week episode this coming week. But as far as things go now, again, a good win against the Giants team that really needed this one to have any real shot at kind of coming back. And, hey, again, I think you tip your cap to the Giants for preparing very well, I think. But, again, the Steelers showing that they're a force to be reckoned with. They have reason to be up there with some of the best teams in the AFC especially. Maybe not quite in the league quite yet, but definitely in the AFC. And as things stand right now, they are the Kings of the North, 6-2 and a game up on Baltimore.
Without a doubt, I think that there's some excitement in the air, and I think that, like, you know, there's been excitement over these past, I mean, ever since 2020, there's been, like, stints of excitement where it's like, you know, that 3-0 stretch or whatever. It's like, oh, okay, like, kind of, like, let's see. But I feel like for this team, the let's see's over, and it's like, okay, like, I just have genuine, like, excitement. Like, I'm just excited. It's not I'm excited, but I don't know. It's like, no, I'm excited. Like, this is we can win. And so I'm excited to just, you know, watch future games, the next game. It's good that we'll get a bye week here that our guys can rest up a little bit. We'll get some guys off of injury. And, yeah, I agree. I think that we're one of the top teams in the AFC, and I'm excited to see, hopefully, if we can keep going on this upward trend.
6-2 Steelers, baby. You can't ask for much better than that. I think if we could have forecasted to be 6-2 at this point of the year at the bye week, I think we would have been very happy with that. So that's exactly where we are right now. And again, we have a bye week, like you said. We get a lot of guys, some very much needed rest, and possibly some guys coming off of IR. So a big bye week. And again, we will have a bye week episode with our report cards from the first half. We'll also have our outside perspective episode for the Commanders game. Again, these will be next week, so stay tuned for that. But as always, the Boardman Black and Gold podcast is sponsored by Zecca Enterprises, crafting furniture solutions in northwestern Pennsylvania. Call 919-406-4679 to learn more. Big win for the Steelers this week, and again, a chance to kind of rest up, maybe watch some other teams, get some scouting reports on some other teams this week. I know I'll be very eagerly watching the NFL, and it's always fun when you have a Sunday where you're not playing. We got to experience this last week. It's like, it's nice when you have a Sunday where you're not playing, because you get to watch and you just get to see kind of all the stuff that happens. There were some really, really awesome games this last week. I specifically watched the Browns-Ravens game and the Bears-Commanders game, so those were the 2 ones that I tuned into, and I was not disappointed.
Yeah, a lot of good games this past week. I love it. It's just, you know, when the Steelers aren't playing on a Sunday, it's just like you can just sit down and just, there's no stress. You can just get to enjoy the football, and there was a lot of good games. I watched, like, half the Commanders game. Like, I saw the Bears score their first touchdown. They were driving in for their second, and then I had got back here from home, and was putting everything away. And then my one friend was like, "Did you see the end of the game?" And I was like, "What? Like, what happened?" And then I watched it, and I was like, "That's insane."
It was absolutely nuts. And man, I feel for Bears fans.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about the Commanders in coming days.
We will.
We will undoubtedly be doing that. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. Hey, we got a new logo. So our our thumbnail, it's a little bit different. It's a little more polished. We got rid of Kenny Pickett. We've got our two happily loving quarterbacks sitting right next to each other, right where they need to be on the bench. Russell Wilson, borderline Hall of Famer, coaching up Justin Fields. I don't think you can ask for a whole lot better, and that is our new logo. So we are very happy to have that as our new thumbnail.
Yeah, I'm so pumped for that, and I love it. And it's just so awesome that, like, you know, there was a couple times when they went to them on the sidelines, and they were both, you know, laughing and going with each other, and like that's just awesome because it wasn't like that years prior when it came to multiple quarterbacks, and this year, they look like they love each other, and so this is awesome to see.
Yes, such good things to see, and if you're a Steelers fans, you can't help but look in that and be like, I think we're in good hands. I think our future is good. I think we're in good shape. So we'll see how things pan out for the second half of the season. But as far as things go right now, take 6-2 and run with it. Enjoy it for a solid 2 weeks. And again, we will be back next week with a lot of work to do. Some grades, some maybe high ones and some maybe low ones for our team. We'll kind of go through that between the two of us. And then our outside perspective episode on the Commanders to follow shortly after that. Once again, thanks so much for listening to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. We will see you next time. Zane and David for our bye week episode.